The nightmare always began the same way. Fire, the smell of gasoline mixing with the sweet scent of lemon trees, the crack of gunshots echoing through marble hallways, and a voice. Always that voice, deep and cold, cutting through the chaos like a blade through silk. Burn it all! Elena Rossi woke with a gasp, her heart hammering against her ribs. The threadbare sheets of her queen's apartment were soaked with sweat. Her hands were shaking. They always shook after the dream. 4 in the morning. The city outside was just beginning to stir. Delivery trucks rumbling, the distant wail of a siren, the ordinary sounds of a world that had forgotten her family ever existed. She opened the top drawer of her small dresser and lifted the false bottom. Beneath it, wrapped in black velvet, was the only thing she had saved from the fire 10 years ago. A silver ring on a thin chain. The crest was worn but still visible, a lion holding a rose in its jaws. The symbol of the Rossi family. The symbol of everything she had lost. She held it for a moment, feeling its weight. Then she tucked it back and closed the drawer. 10 years of being invisible. 10 years of dyeing her hair darker, wearing glasses she did not need, speaking only when spoken to. 10 years of being Elena Miller. Nobody from nowhere. Just one more shift, she told herself. One more night at La Luna Dorada. Then she would disappear again. Maybe Boston or Chicago. Somewhere the name Castellano meant nothing. But even as she thought it, Elena knew it was a lie. You could run from a place. You could run from a name. But you could never run from memory. The hot water did nothing to wash away the terror. Elena dressed mechanically. Black slacks, white button-down shirt. The uniform of the invisible. She pulled her chestnut hair back into a severe bun. Put on the fake glasses. In the mirror, she looked like exactly what she pretended to be. Someone unremarkable. Someone forgettable. Someone safe. The subway ride into Manhattan was crowded. Elena stood pressed against the door, watching the darkness rush past. She thought about her father. Antonio Rossi had been a professor before he became a don. Philosophy. He used to quote Nietzsche to her while teaching her how to load a pistol. The train lurched to a stop at Columbus Circle. Elena got off and walked 6 blocks to La Luna Dorada. The restaurant sat on a quiet street in Midtown, its gold lettering glowing softly in the pre-dawn darkness. The kind of place where reservations were made 6 months in advance. The kind of place where men like Don Marco Castellano came to eat. Elena entered through the staff entrance. The kitchen was already alive with controlled chaos. Pans clanging, ovens roaring. The head chef screaming in French. "You're late," Marcus Webb, the floor manager, bore down on her. A thin, nervous man in his 40s who treated every dinner service like a military operation. His receding hairline was damp with sweat. "I'm 10 minutes early, Marcus," Elena said quietly. Early is on time is late, and late is fired. Marcus dabbed his forehead with a silk handkerchief. "Big night tonight, the biggest. If you screw up, Elena, I will personally make sure you never work in this city again." Elena kept her eyes down. "You're on water duty. Sparkling, still, ice, nothing else. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not look them in the eye. Understood?" "Yes, sir, but who is coming?" Marcus looked at her as if she had just asked what color the sky was. "The Castellano family, Elena. Don Marco Castellano and his son Dante. They've rented the entire VIP mezzanine. If you spill a single drop of San Pellegrino, I will feed you to the sharks myself." The world tilted sideways. Elena gripped the prep table to keep from falling. Castellano. The name that had haunted her dreams for 10 years. The name written in blood across her family's history. The man who had ordered the fire, who had ordered the death of everyone she loved. And tonight, she would have to serve him water. "I understand," she heard herself say. Marcus was already moving away. Elena stood frozen, her mind racing. She should leave. Right now. Walk out and never look back. But her feet would not move. Because beneath the fear was something else. Something that had been sleeping for 10 years. Curiosity, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest whisper of purpose. "Hey!" Jake Morrison, the sous chef, appeared beside her, stocky Irish-American with red hair and kind eyes. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." Elena forced a smile. "I'm fine, Jake, just Marcus being intense." "It's the Castellanos." Jake lowered his voice. "Rumor has it Don Marco is in a foul mood. A deal in Chicago went south. Lost 20 million. He's looking for someone to take it out on." "I see. Just keep your head down. Pour the water. Stay invisible. You're good at that. He squeezed her shoulder and returned to his station. Elena picked up a crystal water goblet and began to polish it. Her hands were steady now. The shock had passed, replaced by something colder, something harder. She rubbed the glass until it squeaked, then picked up another and another, building a wall of repetitive motion between herself and the rising panic. She could hear her father's voice, not from the nightmare, from a memory, a real one. 7 years old, sitting on his lap in his study in Sicily. He was teaching her chess. "Remember, little one," he had said, "the most powerful piece is not the queen, it is the pawn, because the pawn is invisible until the moment it strikes." Elena opened her eyes. The kitchen swam back into focus. She was a pawn. She had been a pawn for 10 years. But tonight, maybe, she would find out what happened when a pawn reached the other side of the board. The hours passed in a blur. Elena polished silverware until her fingers ached. She counted water glasses. She folded napkins into perfect swans. She moved through the restaurant like a ghost. At 6 in the evening, Marcus gathered the entire waitstaff. 30 people stood in a line along the wall, dressed in identical black and white. "Perfection," Marcus said, his voice tight with barely controlled hysteria. "That is what is expected tonight. Not excellence, not competence. Perfection." No one moved. "Good. The Castellano party arrives at 8. Paolo will be serving the VIP table." Paolo, the head waiter, puffed out his chest, a large man in his 50s who claimed to have been born in Naples but had actually grown up in Jersey City. He wore too much cologne. Marcus paused and sniffed the air. His face went pale. He stepped closer to Paolo and inhaled deeply. "What is that smell?" "It is acqua di Parma, signore," Paolo said proudly. "Very expensive, very Italian. You smell like fear and cheap cologne. If you hover over him smelling like whatever that is, he will lose his appetite." Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. "Get out of my sight. You're off the VIP table." Paolo looked like he might cry. He stumbled backward, his dignity crumbling. Marcus looked around frantically. He needed a replacement immediately. Someone quiet, someone who would not offend, someone invisible. His eyes landed on Elena. "No," she whispered, but it was too late. "Elena," Marcus barked. "Step forward." Elena's legs moved on their own. She stepped out of the line, felt tiny, exposed. "This is Elena. She is very quiet. She will serve the VIP table tonight." Elena wanted to scream, wanted to run, but her voice was trapped in her throat. At 7:55, the heavy oak doors swung open. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Elena felt it from where she stood in the shadows, felt the way the air changed. 6 men entered. 4 were clearly bodyguards. They moved with the economy of trained killers, eyes constantly scanning. But it was the 2 men in the center who absorbed all the light in the room. To the left was a younger man, tall, perhaps 6'3". His navy Tom Ford suit fit with predatory grace. His hair was jet black and slicked back, gleaming like polished obsidian. His jawline looked carved from granite, and his eyes, ice blue, cold and calculating. The eyes of a wolf evaluating prey. Dante Castellano. Elena felt her heart stop. She had seen photographs, grainy surveillance shots her father had kept. But photographs did not capture the raw presence of the man, the way he moved through space like violence waiting to happen. This was the boy who had led the raid, who had been 18 years old when he burned her home to the ground. And beside him was the reason why. Don Marco Castellano did not walk. He prowled. Even leaning heavily on an ebony cane topped with a silver wolf's head, he commanded the room with the authority of an emperor. Late 60s now, silver hair swept back from a weathered face mapped with scars. He wore a charcoal 3-piece suit and a long cashmere overcoat draped over his shoulders like a cape. His eyes were dark and hooded. The eyes of a man who had seen everything and been surprised by nothing. The eyes of a killer who slept well at night. Marcus practically prostrated himself. "Don Marco, Mr. Dante, it is the honor of a lifetime to welcome you to La Luna Dorata. Your table is prepared." Don Marco did not look at him. He simply tapped his cane once on the marble floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "The wine," the Don rasped. His voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "Did you get the 82 Sassicaia?" Yes, of course, Don Marco. We flew it in from Tuscany this morning. It has been decanting for 2 hours." The Don grunted. He began to move toward the VIP mezzanine. His limp was pronounced but dignified, each step calculated, controlled. Dante walked a half step behind. His ice blue eyes swept over the line of staff, evaluating, dismissing, looking for threats. When his gaze landed on Elena, she felt it like a physical touch. She quickly lowered her eyes, stared at his polished Oxford shoes, made herself small, made herself invisible. But it was too late. She had been seen. Wait, the single word from Dante brought the entire procession to a halt. Marcus froze. The bodyguards tensed. Don Marco turned slowly. Yes, Mr. Dante? Dante stepped closer to the line. He stopped directly in front of Stephen, the sommelier. You, Dante said, his voice smooth but carrying an edge sharp enough to draw blood. You were reaching for something in your jacket when we entered. Show me what it is. Slowly. Stephen went white. I was just... My phone, sir, I swear. Show me. With trembling hands, Stephen pulled out an iPhone. Dante took it, examined it, turned it over like he was defusing a bomb, then handed it back. No phones on the floor during service. Marcus, I believe you have a policy about that? Yes, sir, absolutely. Stephen, you're dismissed. Leave, now. Stephen fled. Dante returned his attention to the line. His eyes moved from face to face, searching for something. Weakness, deception, threat. He stopped in front of Elena. She could smell him, sandalwood, tobacco, and something metallic, like gun oil. You, Dante said. Elena's head snapped up. Yes, sir? You're shaking. She was. She clasped her hands behind her back, trying to still the betrayal. I apologize, sir. I'm just nervous. Don Marco had turned now. He was looking at her with bored, tired eyes. Does she have hands? Can she pour wine without dropping the bottle? Yes, sir, Elena said, forcing her voice to steady. I can. The Don stared at her for a long moment. Then he did something unexpected. He leaned forward slightly and sniffed the air near her. Soap, he said, unscented. Good. He turned and continued toward the stairs. Dante lingered for just a moment longer. He was so close, Elena could see the flecks of gray in his blue eyes, could see the faint scar along his jawline. Don't make a mistake, he said softly. So softly that only she could hear. My father isn't known for his forgiveness. Then he turned and followed the Don up the stairs, leaving Elena standing there with her heart trying to beat its way out of her chest. Marcus grabbed her arm. His grip was painful. What are you waiting for? The antipasto. Go! The VIP mezzanine was dimly lit, overlooking the main dining floor. The table was set with white linen, heavy silver cutlery, and a bottle of 1982 Sassicaia that cost more than a luxury car. Elena moved like a ghost. She placed the bread basket down. Homemade focaccia with rosemary and sea salt. Then she poured the sparkling water, twisting her wrist at the end to prevent a drip. The bodyguards stood at the corners, facing outward. It was just the Don and Dante at the table. The tension between father and son was thick. The construction on the Jersey waterfront has stalled, Dante said. The unions are asking for another 5%. Give them 2, Don Marco grunted, and break the knees of the representative who asked for 5. It's risky, Papa. The feds are watching the union leaders closely. I don't pay you to tell me about risks, Dante. I pay you to handle them. You've been soft lately, ever since London. Dante's jaw tightened. I'm not soft. I'm cautious. There's a difference. Is there? Elena approached with the first course. Carpaccio of Sicilian red prawns with blood orange reduction in fennel pollen. She placed the plates down gently. Carpaccio di gamberi rossi, signore, she murmured. Her Italian was perfect. Too perfect. She realized her mistake a split second too late. Don Marco looked up at her, really looked at her for the first time. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he said nothing. He picked up his fork and poked at the delicate raw prawn. Took a small bite, chewed slowly. The room went silent. Elena stepped back into the shadows, clasping her hands behind her back. Waiting. The Don spat the food into his napkin, then threw it onto the table with a disgusted flick of his wrist. Garbage. Elena flinched. Papa, Dante sighed, it's the best seafood restaurant in the city. It's fake. They call this Sicilian. Bah. The prawns are cold, dead things. And the orange? It's sweet. It's candy. It's not a blood orange from the slopes of Etna. It's a Valencia from Florida. He slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. The wine glasses trembled. I am tired of this city. I am tired of fake people and fake food. Bring me the chef. Papa, please, Dante's voice was low and warning. Don't cause a scene tonight. I will cause a scene if I want to. The Don turned his fury toward Elena. You, girl. Elena stepped forward. Yes, Don Marco. Take this away. It insults me. Tell the chef he doesn't know the difference between a blood orange and a tangerine. Go. Elena reached for the plate, but then she stopped. Her eyes fell on the dish, on the glistening ruby sauce, on the delicate pink flesh of the prawn. She knew that smell. She knew that color. It was not a Valencia orange. It was not fake. It was Tarraco, the queen of oranges, grown only in the volcanic soil of Catania during the winter months. Rare, expensive, and absolutely perfect. The chef had not made a mistake. The Don was wrong. But telling a Mafia Don he was wrong was signing your own death warrant. But Elena felt something shift inside her. Something that had been dormant for 10 years. A stubborn, fiery pride that belonged to a girl who used to run through lemon groves in Sicily, who used to sit on her father's lap while he taught her the names of every fruit tree on their estate, a girl who was taught that there was no honor in allowing ignorance to masquerade as authority. With respect, signore, Elena said quietly, her voice steady now. The prawns are from Mazzara del Valle, and the orange, it is not sweet because it is candy. It is sweet because it is a Tarocco Moro, harvested in late January. The volcanic soil on the eastern slope of Etna gives it that specific amaro, that bitterness at the end. You taste it after the sweetness fades. The silence that followed was absolute. Don Marco slowly turned his head to look at her. His eyes were wide, not with anger, with shock, because Elena was not speaking English anymore. Without realizing it, she had switched. The words had poured out in Siciliano, not the standard Italian taught in schools, but the dialect, the thick, guttural, ancient language of the inland mountains near Corleone, the language that cut off the ends of words and rolled the R's deep in the throat, the language of the old families, the language of blood. Dante sat up straight, his hand instinctively moving toward the gun holster beneath his jacket. The bodyguards tensed. Don Marco stared at Elena. His weathered face had gone pale, his mouth opened slightly. What did you say? The Don's voice was trembling now, not with anger, with something else. Elena realized what she had done. Her hand flew to her mouth. She had exposed herself. After 10 years of silence, of hiding, she had spoken the language of her childhood, the language that marked her as clearly as a brand on skin. I apologize, she stammered, switching back to English. I just meant the chef used good ingredients. I will take it away. No. Don Marco raised his hand. His fingers were shaking slightly. Say it again. Sir, the dialect. The Don leaned forward, his eyes searching her face with intensity. Where did you learn to speak the tongue of the Entroterra? You are a waitress in New York. You look like a college student. How do you know the taste of a Tarocco Moro from the eastern slope? Elena's mind raced. She could not tell him the truth. If she told him her last name was Rossi, she would be dead before dessert. The Rossi and Castellano families had been at war for 50 years. She was supposed to be dead. She was supposed to be ash in memory. My grandmother, Elena lied, the words coming out shakily. She was from a village near Prisi. She raised me. She was very particular about fruit. It was not entirely a lie. Her grandmother had been from Prisi, had taught her the dialects, had made her memorize the names of every citrus variety grown in Sicily. But she had died when Elena was 6, long before the war, long before the fire. Don Marco studied her face. He looked at her hands, her posture, the way she held herself despite the fear. Prissy, he muttered. There was something in his voice, a darkness. Bad blood in Prissy. He picked up his fork again, took another bite of the prawn, dragging it through the blood-orange sauce. This time he chewed slowly, thoughtfully. He closed his eyes. You are right, he said softly. When he opened his eyes again, they were fixed on Elena with an unreadable expression. It is a Moro. I have lost my taste with age. He looked at Dante. This girl, she has the old tongue. You hear that, Dante? She speaks better than you. Dante was not smiling. He was watching Elena with new and dangerous interest. He was no longer looking at her like a waitress. He was looking at her like a puzzle he needed to solve, like a threat he needed to neutralize. What is your name? Dante asked, his voice quiet but cutting through the room like a knife. Elena, sir. Elena. Dante repeated it, testing the name. You should be careful, Elena. People who know too much about the Entroterra, they tend to have short lives in this city. I know nothing, sir, Elena whispered. Just about oranges. We'll see. Dante reached into his jacket. Elena's breath caught, but he did not pull out a gun. He pulled out a gold money clip. He peeled off 5 $100 bills and placed them on the table. "For the lesson on citrus," he said, eyes never leaving her face. "Now, leave us." Elena nodded. She grabbed the tray with trembling hands and backed away. Every instinct screamed at her to turn and run, but she forced herself to move slowly, carefully. As she reached the kitchen door, she glanced back. Dante had turned in his chair. His body was angled toward her. His ice blue eyes were locked on her retreating figure. He knew. Maybe not everything, but he knew she was lying. She had survived the appetizer. But the main course was coming, and Elena had a terrible feeling that tonight she was on the menu. The kitchen was chaos. Marcus bore down on her, face flushed. "Table 4 needs a refill. And the VIP table." Mr. Dante requested another bottle. "The Barolo, the 1996 Conterno. Go to the cellar now." Elena nodded, grateful for the excuse to disappear. "Yes, Marcus." She hurried down the narrow stone stairs to the wine cellar. The temperature dropped with each step. The air smelled of damp earth and aged oak. Silent, a sanctuary. She found the bottle, heavy, worth more than her car. She gripped the neck, taking a deep breath. "Just get through the night," she whispered to the darkness. "One more hour, then you clock out. Go home to Queens and never come back." "You ran away quickly." The voice came from the shadows near the stairs. Low, smooth, and it terrified her more than the darkness ever could. Elena spun around, clutching the wine bottle like a shield. Dante Castellanos stepped into the dim light. He had removed his jacket, revealing a white dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar. The gun holster was visible now. He looked like a fallen angel, beautiful and lethal in equal measure. "Mr. Castellano," Elena gasped, her back hitting the wine rack. I was just getting the wine." "The wine can wait." Dante walked slowly toward her. "My father is impressed. He thinks you're a charming peasant girl with a good grandmother." He stopped 2 feet from her, close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood and tobacco and cold steel. "I am just a waitress, sir," Elena said, lowering her gaze. "Look at me." It was not a request. Elena forced her chin up, met his ice blue eyes. "I know Prizzi," Dante said softly. "I spent 2 summers there when I was a boy. My grandfather had a villa in the hills. The dialect you spoke, it wasn't just Sicilian, it was high dialect, the kind spoken by the old families, the educated families. Peasant grandmothers don't speak like that. They speak rough. You spoke like a poet." He reached out. His hand hovered near her face. Elena flinched, pressing harder against the wine rack. Bottles rattled behind her. Dante smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "And your hands, no burn marks from ovens, no calluses from scrubbing floors. You have manicured cuticles. You take care of yourself, Elena." He stepped closer, boxing her in. "Who are you working for? The Russos? The Bianchis? Are you a Spinai?" His voice dropped to a growl. "If you lie to me, I will find out, and I won't be as polite as I am being right now." "I am nobody," Elena said, the words coming out stronger than she felt. "I'm just a girl trying to pay rent. My grandmother, she worked for a wealthy family. She learned to speak properly from them. That's all. Please, let me go upstairs." Dante studied her face for a long, agonizing moment, looking for a crack in the mask, looking for the lie beneath the truth. He saw fear, but he also saw something else in her hazel eyes. Pride. A stubborn, fiery pride that did not belong to a servant. He leaned in. His lips brushed her ear. "I don't believe you." He pulled back. His eyes dropped to her neck. A thin silver chain was visible just above the collar of her uniform. "What is this?" He reached for it. Elena slapped his hand away. The sound echoed in the silence like a gunshot. She froze. She had just slapped the underboss of the Castellano crime family. She had just signed her own death warrant. Dante looked at his hand, then back at her. His expression was unreadable. For a second, she thought he was going to kill her right there, snap her neck and leave her body in the wine cellar to be found in the morning. Instead, a slow, dark smile spread across his face. "Feisty," he whispered. "I like that." Suddenly, the heavy oak door burst open. Marcus's voice echoed down, muffled but frantic. "Elena, Mr. Castellano, is everything all right? The Don is asking for the wine." Dante did not break eye contact. "We're coming," he called back, voice calm, controlled. He stepped back, giving her space. "This isn't over, Elena. Pour the wine. But don't think I'm not watching every move you make. He turned and walked up the stairs, footsteps echoing on stone. Elena slumped against the wine rack, legs threatening to give out. She pulled the silver chain out from under her shirt. Attached to it was the ring, the heavy silver ring with the crest, a lion holding a rose, the crest of the Rossi family. She hastily tucked it back inside her uniform, grabbed the bottle with shaking hands, and forced her legs to move. She was walking back into the lion's den, and this time she knew the lion was hungry. When Elena returned to the VIP mezzanine, the atmosphere had shifted. Don Marco was laughing, a rare, raspy sound that seemed to surprise even the bodyguards. 3 other men had joined the table. Capos, made men. One was Victor Romano, mid-40s with a scarred face and a reputation for brutality. Victor was telling a story, gesturing wildly, something about a politician in Albany and a briefcase full of cash. The men laughed. Even Don Marco seemed amused. Elena approached to uncork the Barolo. Her hands were steady now. The adrenaline from the cellar had turned into something colder, something more focused, a survival mechanism she had learned from her father. When the wolf is at the door, you do not shake, you sharpen your knife. She poured a taste for Dante. He did not look at the wine. He looked at her. His eyes tracked every movement, every breath. He nodded once. She moved to the Don. As she poured the deep red liquid, her eyes scanned the room out of habit. Something her father had drilled into her. Always know your exits. Always read the room. Below in the main dining area, the dinner rush was at its peak. Waiters rushed back and forth. Customers laughed and clinked glasses. The ordinary chaos of a Friday night in Manhattan. But Elena's gaze snagged on something. A man at a corner table. He was alone, eating ossobuco. But he was not looking at his food. He was looking at his watch, repeatedly. He wore a gray suit that fit poorly around the chest. Too bulky. Elena frowned. She knew suits. Her father had worn only Brioni. A bulky chest on a tailored suit meant one thing. A vest. A Kevlar vest. She poured the wine, heart rate picking up. Ignore it, she told herself. Not your problem. Let the Castellanos die. They killed your family. She moved a step away. The man in the gray suit stood up, but he did not walk toward the exit. He walked toward the stairs, toward the mezzanine. He reached into his jacket. Simultaneously, Elena saw a flicker of movement from the high window across the street. A glint of light, a reflection, a scope. Time seemed to slow down. The man on the stairs was a distraction, a sacrifice. The real threat was outside. A sniper with a clear line of sight to the VIP table. Don Marco was raising his glass of wine to his lips. He was sitting directly in front of the window. Elena did not think. She did not weigh the pros and cons. She did not ask herself why she would save the man who had destroyed her life. Her body simply reacted. Training ingrained in her childhood took over. "Get down!" she screamed the words as she dropped the tray. Crystal glasses shattered on the floor with a deafening crash. In the same motion, she lunged forward. She did not try to shove the Don. He was too heavy. Instead, she grabbed the edge of the heavy mahogany table and heaved it upward with a strength born of pure adrenaline. The table flipped onto its side just as the window behind them exploded. Crack! A high-velocity bullet slammed into the overturned table right where Don Marco's chest had been a second ago. Splinters of wood exploded into the air. The sound of the gunshot was still echoing when chaos erupted. "Sniper!" Dante roared. He tackled his father to the ground, covering the old man's body with his own. The bodyguards drew their weapons instantly, scanning for threats. The man in the gray suit pulled out a submachine gun. But before he could aim, Victor Romano put 2 rounds in his chest. The assassin tumbled backward down the stairs, screaming. His body hit the marble floor with a sickening crunch. Below, the restaurant descended into pandemonium. People screaming, scrambling for exits, tables overturned. Glass breaking, the primitive sound of human panic. Elena was on the floor covered in wine and broken glass. She was panting, ears ringing. She had curled into a ball, arms over her head, instinct protecting her skull. The shooting stopped. The bodyguards were moving, coordinating over earpieces. "Clear! We're clear! Shooter is on the north roof. Get a team there now." Dante slowly stood up, helping his father to his feet. Don Marco was pale, clutching his chest, but alive. He looked at the shattered window, then at the bullet hole in the table that had saved his life. Then both men looked at Elena. She slowly lowered her arms, tried to stand up, but her knees were weak. A shard of glass had cut her arm. Blood was trickling down her white sleeve, mixing with the wine. "You." Don Marco's voice was hoarse. He pointed a shaking finger at her. How did you know? Elena could not breathe. The adrenaline was fading now, replaced by raw terror. She had just saved the man she hated most in the world, and in doing so she had revealed herself completely. No waitress reacts that fast. No waitress recognizes a sniper's scope reflection in a window. No waitress flips a 300-pound oak table like it weighs nothing. I, I saw the reflection, she stammered. The light. I just... Dante stepped over the broken glass. He grabbed her uninjured arm and hauled her to her feet. He did not look angry anymore. He looked stunned and deeply suspicious. You flipped a 300-pound solid oak table, Dante said, his voice tight, controlled. And you called the shot before the glass broke. You saw a scope reflection from across the street in less than a second. I was lucky, Elena lied. Luck doesn't move like that. Dante looked at his father. Papa, we have to go. The car is out back. We're taking her. What? Elena panicked. She tried to pull away. No, let me go. I saved you. Exactly. You see, Dante's grip tightened like an iron band around her arm. You saved the Don, which means you are either a guardian angel or you knew the hit was coming because you were part of it. I wasn't, I swear. We'll discuss it at the compound, Don Marco said. His voice had returned to its granite hardness. The shock was fading. The predator was back. Bring her. Don't let her out of your sight. No, Elena screamed. She struggled, but Dante was too strong. He dragged her toward the kitchen exit, surrounded by a phalanx of bodyguards. As they burst out into the cool night air of the alley, Elena realized her life as a ghost was over. She was back in the world of the Castellanos, back in the world of the living, and the living she knew were far more dangerous than the dead. The interior of the armored SUV was a vacuum of silence. Outside the tinted bulletproof windows, the city lights blurred into streaks of neon violence. But inside the air was thick enough to choke on. Elena sat pressed against the cold leather door, as far from Dante as the confined space would allow. Her arm was throbbing where the glass had cut her. The bleeding had slowed, but her white sleeve was stained dark red. She stole a glance at Dante. He was not looking at her. He was staring straight ahead, his profile sharp and predatory in the passing streetlights. He was typing furiously on a secure phone, his thumbs moving with lethal precision. Perimeter breach. Secure the North Shore. I want names by morning. He spoke into the device, then hung up. He slowly turned his head. His ice-blue eyes locked onto hers. In the darkness of the car, they looked almost gray, like storm clouds before lightning. He did not speak. He just watched her, analyzing the rise and fall of her chest, the blood drying on her uniform, the way her hands were clenched into white-knuckled fists in her lap. He was dissecting her, looking for weaknesses, looking for lies. You're bleeding on the leather, he said finally. His voice was devoid of emotion, a flat statement of fact. I'm sorry, Elena whispered. She instinctively covered the cut on her forearm with her other hand. I'll pay for the cleaning. A dry, humorless laugh escaped his lips. You just saved the Capo dei Capi from a sniper's bullet. And you're worried about a cleaning bill. He leaned forward slightly. You really are an enigma, Elena. The car slowed, turning off the highway and onto a winding private road lined with ancient oak trees. They passed through massive wrought iron gates that stood at least 20 feet high, topped with spikes that gleamed under floodlights. Guards with assault rifles patrolled the perimeter. German shepherds strained at their leashes. Security cameras tracked the SUV's progress down the gravel drive. This was not a home. It was a fortress. It was the Castellano estate, the stronghold of the enemy. Elena felt a wave of nausea. 10 years ago, she had promised herself she would never be this close to the Castellano power again. She had spent a decade erasing herself, becoming a ghost, living in the shadows of Queens. And now she was being driven right into the heart of the beast. The SUV crunched to a halt on the gravel driveway in front of a sprawling stone mansion that looked like it had been transported piece by piece from Tuscany. Warm light spilled from tall windows. The front doors swung open before the engine even cut out. Rocco, the head of security, opened the back door, a wall of muscle in an expensive suit with dead eyes and an earpiece. We're clear, boss. Perimeter is locked down. Dante stepped out first. Then he reached in and grabbed Elena's uninjured arm. His grip was firm, not painful, but there was no escaping it. He pulled her out into the cool night air. Don Marco had emerged from the lead vehicle. He was leaning heavily on his bodyguard, his face pale, one hand clutching his chest. The near-death experience had rattled him, but his eyes were still sharp, still calculating. Get the doctor to the West Wing. Dante commanded the staff swarming the entrance. Check his heart. Check for shock. Call me if there's any change. Don Marco paused at the top of the stone steps. He looked back at Elena. For a brief moment, the terrifying mask of the Don slipped. She saw a tired old man, a man who had just looked death in the face and survived by inches. The girl, Don Marco rasped. Treat her well, Dante. She bled for us. I know what to do, Papa, Dante said. There was tightness in his voice. Go, rest. They watched the Don disappear into the house, supported by his men. Once he was gone, the atmosphere shifted. Dante turned to Elena, and the protective sun vanished. The ruthless underboss returned. Come with me. He did not wait for her to agree. He marched her through the grand foyer, past marble statues that probably cost more than most people's houses, past oil paintings of stern-faced men who looked like they had never smiled in their lives, the Castellano ancestors. Generations of power built on blood and fear. The house was silent, heavy with the weight of its own secrets. Servants in black uniforms scurried out of their path, keeping their heads down. They knew better than to look at Dante when he had that expression. He led her up a sweeping staircase and down a long, dimly lit corridor. Finally, he pushed open a set of double mahogany doors. His office. It smelled of expensive tobacco, old paper, and gun oil. A fire was crackling in the hearth, casting long, dancing shadows against walls lined with bookshelves. Law books, history books, first editions bound in leather. Dante pointed to a leather armchair in front of the massive desk. Sit. Elena sat. She felt small in the chair, like a child called to the principal's office. Dante walked to a side table and poured 2 glasses of amber liquid from a crystal decanter. He walked over and handed her one. Brandy, he said. Drink it. It helps with shock. Elena took the glass. Her hands were shaking slightly. She took a sip. The liquid burned her throat, but the warmth bloomed in her stomach, steadying her nerves. Dante did not sit. He leaned against the edge of his desk, crossing his ankles, towering over her. He took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes never leaving her face. I have a very good tech team, Elena, he began softly. The gentleness of his tone was more terrifying than if he had shouted. While we were in the car, I had them run your face through the databases, NYPD, FBI, DMV, even the Interpol watch list. Elena's heart skipped a beat. She set the glass down on the desk, afraid she might drop it. Dante reached behind him and picked up a tablet. He tapped the screen and turned it toward her. Elena Miller, he read. His voice was dripping with sarcasm. Born in Dayton, Ohio. Social Security number issued in 1998. Parents deceased in a car accident. Moved to New York 3 years ago. He swiped the screen. A red box appeared with the word error flashing. It's a very good fake, Dante admitted. The physical ID card is a masterpiece. But the digital footprint? He shook his head. It's a ghost. The Social Security number belongs to a woman who died in infancy in 1999. The high school records in Ohio, they don't exist. There is no birth certificate. He set the tablet down with a clatter. He leaned forward, placing his hands on the arms of her chair, trapping her. His face was inches from hers. So, gal, the word was a whisper. Dangerous. You are not Elena Miller. You speak the high dialect of the Sicilian mountains. You know how to identify a sniper scope by a reflection. You have the reflexes of a soldier, and you are working as a waitress in my city. He paused, let the silence stretch until it was unbearable. Who sent you? He growled. Are you an assassin who got cold feet? Are you a plant from the Russos? Tell me the truth and I might let you walk out of here alive. Elena looked into his eyes. She saw the suspicion, the anger, but she also saw something else. Confusion. He could not reconcile the waitress he had seen earlier with the woman who had saved his father. She knew she could not lie anymore. The tech report had stripped her bare. If she lied again, he would see through it, and he would kill her. The only weapon she had left was the truth. I am not an assassin, she said. Her voice was trembling but clear. And I don't work for the Russos. Then who are you? Elena took a deep breath. She reached up to her neck and pulled the silver chain out from under her uniform. The heavy ring dangled there, spinning slowly in the firelight. Dante's eyes dropped to the ring. He froze, completely still, like a predator that had just spotted something it did not understand. He recognized the crest, a lion holding a rose. That ring, Dante breathed. He reached out. His fingers brushed against the warm skin of her neck as he took the ring in his hand. He stared at it as if it were a poisonous snake. It was my father's, Elena said softly. Dante looked up. His face had gone pale. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was impossible. Rossi, he whispered. The name hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. My name is Elena Rossi, she said. Her voice was steady now. Daughter of Antonio Rossi. Dante recoiled as if he had been burned. He stood up abruptly, backing away, putting the desk between them. He ran a hand through his hair, started pacing the room like a caged animal. Rossi, he muttered to himself. Impossible. We burned the compound 10 years ago. The night of ash. Everyone died. The report said everyone died. I was in the wine cellar, Elena said. Tears were spilling over now, hot and unstoppable. I was 13 years old, Dante. My mother hid me in an empty barrel. I heard the gunfire. I heard the screams. She looked at him with eyes full of accusation and pain. I heard your voice. Dante stopped pacing. He turned to look at her. Horror was dawning on his face. The full weight of what he had done was finally hitting him. He remembered that night. It was burned into his memory like a brand. He had been 18, eager to prove himself, desperate for his father's approval. He had led the charge. He had given the order to torch the main house. You were the girl, he said. His voice was hollow. Antonio had a daughter, a little girl with hazel eyes. We never found the body. I crawled out when the smoke cleared, Elena said. Her voice was shaking with emotion. I took a bus to the city. I cut my hair. I changed my name. I just wanted to live, Dante. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted to disappear. Dante looked at her, really looked at her, seeing her not as a threat, not as a puzzle, but as a survivor of his own making. The guilt hit him like a physical blow. He had created this ghost, this broken, haunted woman sitting in his office. He had destroyed her family, killed her mother, burned her childhood to ash, and tonight she had saved his father's life. Why? The word came out cracked, broken. If you are a Rossi, if you know I am the one who destroyed your family, why did you save my father tonight? Why save us? Elena stood up. She walked toward the fire, hugging her arms around herself, staring into the flames. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but fierce. Because when I saw that red dot on his chest, I didn't see the monster of New York. I saw an old man about to be murdered in cold blood. She turned to face him. Her eyes were blazing with tears and fire. My father, Antonio Rossi, he taught me that there is no honor in a cowardly kill. That revenge is a poison that destroys the one who drinks it. She stepped closer to him. I am not you, Dante. I don't kill for power. I saved him because it was right. Even if I hate you for what you took from me. The room was silent except for the crackling of the fire. Dante stared at her, mesmerized. She was standing in the center of his power, admitting she was the heir to his family's greatest enemy. And yet she held her head high like a queen. The hatred he was supposed to feel was not there. The ingrained duty to extinguish the Rossi bloodline, he could not summon it. Instead, there was something else, a fierce, burning admiration. And beneath that, something darker, something that made his chest tighten and his pulse quicken. He had expected to find an enemy tonight, a spy, an assassin, someone to interrogate and eliminate. But instead, he had found her, Elena Rossi, the ghost of his greatest sin, standing in his office with tears on her cheeks and defiance in her eyes. And God help him, he wanted her. Not just physically, though that desire was there too, sharp and undeniable, but something deeper, something that terrified him more than any bullet or blade ever could. He wanted to protect her, to keep her safe, to earn her forgiveness even though he knew he never could. You should have let him die, Dante said quietly. He moved toward her, each step deliberate, controlled. You should have watched the bullet tear through him. You should have smiled as his blood pooled on the floor. That would have been justice, Elena. That would have been revenge. I told you, Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm not you. No. Dante stopped directly in front of her, so close he could see the gold flecks in her hazel eyes, could see the tear tracks on her cheeks. You're better than me. You're better than all of us. He reached up slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she did not, he cupped her face in his hands. His thumbs traced the lines of her cheekbones. Do you know what my father would do if he found out a Rossi was in his house? Dante asked. His voice was rough, raw. He would kill you himself, slowly. He would make it last for days. He would make you beg for the mercy of death. I know, Elena whispered. And do you know what I should do? Dante continued. I should march you down to that West Wing right now. I should tell him exactly who you are. I should watch him destroy you, just like we destroyed your family. It's my duty, my obligation, my honor. He leaned in, his forehead rested against hers. She could feel his breath on her lips. But I can't, he said. The words sounded torn from somewhere deep inside him. God help me, Elena. I can't. Why not? Elena breathed. Because you saved him. You saved my father. And in doing so, you created a debt. A life for a life. That's the old law. The law my father taught me before I could walk. The law that binds us all. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. You saved the king, so the prince will save you. His hand moved from her face to her throat, not threatening, gentle. His fingers traced the line of the silver chain still visible against her skin. This ring, Dante said softly. Your father wore it. I remember seeing it on his hand the night of the fire. I was standing in the courtyard. I could see him through the window. He was fighting, trying to get to the upper floors, trying to save your mother. Dante's voice cracked. He almost made it. He was so close. But the stairs collapsed. The fire was too hot, too fast. He fell, and I did nothing. I just watched. You were following orders, Elena said. The words felt like glass in her throat. I was a coward, Dante corrected. I was 18 years old and I thought I was a man. I thought I was proving myself. But I was just a boy playing at war. And your father? Antonio Rossi was a real man, a good man, a man who loved his family more than power. He released the chain and stepped back, ran both hands through his hair, turned away from her. I've killed a lot of people, Elena. More than I can count, more than I can remember. Most of them deserved it, some of them didn't. But your family, that's the sin I carry. That's the weight that wakes me up at 3 a.m, covered in sweat. He turned back to face her. His ice blue eyes were bright with something that might have been tears in a lesser man. So no, I'm not going to tell my father who you are. I'm going to protect you. I'm going to build a cage of gold around you so strong that nothing and no one can touch you. Not my father, not Victor, not anyone. A cage, Elena repeated. The word was bitter on her tongue. You mean a prison? I mean protection, Dante said. There's a difference. Is there? The question hung between them, heavy, unanswerable. Before Dante could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His expression shifted, became harder, more focused. The tech team found something else, he said. He picked up the tablet again, swiping through screens. They ran deeper searches after the fake ID failed. They cross-referenced your face with old Interpol photos, immigration records from the early 2000s. He turned the tablet toward her. On the screen was a photograph. Grainy, faded, but unmistakable. A little girl with hazel eyes and dark hair, standing between a man and a woman. The man wore a white linen suit. The woman wore a summer dress. They were standing in front of a villa in Sicily. Lemon trees visible in the background. The caption at the bottom read, Antonio Rossi, Don of the Rossi family, with wife Maria and daughter Elena. Photograph taken 3 months before the night of Ash massacre. Elena stared at the photo. She had not seen it in 10 years, had not even known it existed. But there it was, proof of who she had been, proof of what she had lost. My tech team is very good, Dante said quietly, but they're also loyal. They report only to me. This photo exists in exactly one place right now, on this tablet. I can delete it, or I can keep it. Insurance in case you decide to put a knife in my back when I'm not looking. He set the tablet down on the desk between them. The choice is yours, Elena. Trust me, or don't. But know this, if you run, if you try to disappear again, I will find you. Not to kill you, but because, he trailed off, seemed to struggle with the words, because I need to know you're safe. Elena looked at the tablet, at the photograph of a family that no longer existed, at the evidence that could destroy her if it fell into the wrong hands. She thought about running, about grabbing the tablet and smashing it, about fighting her way out of this house and disappearing into the night. But where would she go? How long could she run before the Castellanos found her? How long before someone else recognized her face or her voice or the way she moved? And more than that, there was something in Dante's eyes, something raw and honest and desperate that made her want to trust him, even though every instinct screamed that it was insane. Delete it, Elena said finally. Dante's eyebrows rose. You're sure? Delete it. If you want me to trust you, prove you're worthy of it. Delete the photo. Delete the search results. Erase everything your team found. Dante held her gaze for a long moment. Then he picked up the tablet. His fingers moved across the screen. Tap, tap, tap. Delete, delete, delete. He turned the tablet around to show her. The photo was gone. The search results were gone. To Bryson, the screen showed nothing but a blank desktop. It's done, he said. There's no record anymore. As far as anyone knows, Elena Miller is a waitress with a fake ID and no past. Nothing ties you to the Rossis. Nothing ties you to Sicily. Except you, Elena said. You know. Yes, Dante agreed. I know. And I'll take that knowledge to my grave. He set the tablet down, walked toward her again. This time he did not stop until he was close enough to touch. For tonight you are Elena the waitress, he said, his voice low and intense. You are under my protection. You will stay in the East Wing. No one goes there except me. You'll have your own room, your own bathroom. Food will be brought to you. You'll have books, television, whatever you need. A gilded cage, Elena said. A sanctuary, Dante corrected. A place where no one can hurt you while we figure out what happens next. And what does happen next? Elena asked. Do I just live here forever, hiding in the East Wing like some kind of ghost? I don't know, Dante admitted. I need time to think, to plan, to find a way to keep you alive without starting a war. Your father will want to see me again, Elena pointed out. He'll want to thank me, to reward me. He'll ask questions. I'll handle my father, Dante said, but there was uncertainty in his voice. They both knew that handling Don Marco Castellano was easier said than done. The fire crackled, the shadows danced, the clock on the mantel ticked steadily toward midnight. And then, cutting through the silence like a knife, came the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway. Multiple sets, moving with purpose. Dante's head snapped toward the door. His hand moved instinctively to the gun at his hip. Stay behind me, he ordered Elena. His voice had shifted. Gone was the guilt-ridden young man. Back was the underboss, the killer, the wolf. The footsteps stopped outside the door. There was a moment of silence. Then a knock. 3 sharp raps that echoed in the office like gunshots. Dante! Don Marco's voice boomed from the other side of the door. Open this door! I want to thank the girl myself. Why is it locked? Elena's blood turned to ice. She looked at Dante, saw the same fear reflected in his eyes. They were out of time. Dante turned to Elena, grabbed her shoulders. His fingers dug in hard enough to bruise. Not a word, he hissed. His voice was barely audible, desperate. If you speak Sicilian, if you show even an ounce of that Rossi pride, we are both dead. Do you understand? Elena nodded. She could not speak, could not breathe, could not think beyond the primal terror that flooded her veins. Dante! Don Marco's voice came again, louder now, impatient. I know she's in there with you. Open the door. Now. Dante released Elena's shoulders. He smoothed his suit jacket with hands that were almost steady, took a deep breath, ran a hand through his hair. He looked at Elena one last time. There was something in his eyes. A message, a promise, a prayer. Then he turned and walked to the door. He placed his hand on the lock. The metal was cold beneath his palm. Behind him, Elena stood frozen. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. The Rossi ring lay heavy and warm against her chest, hidden once more beneath her blood-stained uniform. The lion was coming in, and this time there was nowhere left to run. Dante turned the handle. The door swung open. Don Marco stood in the hallway. His face was still pale from the near-death experience, but his eyes were sharp, calculating, missing nothing. He looked past Dante, directly at Elena, and he smiled. Don Marco Castellano stepped into the office like a king entering his throne room. He moved slowly, still leaning on his cane, but there was a predatory grace to him, a wolf that had survived the hunt and was now assessing his prize. Behind him came 2 bodyguards, and behind them, Victor Romano. The scarred capo's dark eyes swept the room, landing on Elena with an intensity that made her skin crawl. Papa, Dante said, his voice carefully controlled, you should be resting. The doctor said I'm alive because of this girl. Don Marco cut him off. He moved further into the room, his cane tapping against the hardwood floor. I wanted to thank her myself, to look her in the eye and tell her that the Castellano family does not forget its debts. He stopped a few feet from Elena. Up close, she could see the lines of exhaustion around his eyes, the tremor in his hands, the way his breathing was slightly labored. He was an old man, a tired man, a man who had just looked death in the face, but he was still dangerous. "What is your name, girl?" Don Marco asked. His voice was gentler than it had been at the restaurant, almost fatherly. "Elena, Don Marco," she said quietly. She kept her eyes down, made herself small. "Elena." He repeated it slowly as if tasting the word. "That's a good Sicilian name. Your grandmother was from Prizzi, Dante tells me." Elena's heart skipped. Dante had already told him? Had already started building the lie? "Yes, Don Marco," Elena said. "Prizzi." The old man nodded slowly. "I knew some families from Prizzi long time ago, before the wars, before everything went to hell." He reached into his jacket. Elena tensed, but he did not pull out a gun. He pulled out a leather wallet. From it, he extracted a thick stack of bills. $50,000, Don Marco said, holding the money toward her. "For saving my life, for your courage, for your loyalty." Elena stared at the money. $50,000, more than she made in 2 years at the restaurant, enough to disappear, to start over somewhere far away. But taking the money felt like accepting blood money, like forgiving the unforgivable. "I cannot accept this, Don Marco," Elena heard herself say. The room went silent. Victor's hand moved toward his gun. The bodyguards tensed. Even Dante looked shocked. No one refused a gift from Don Marco Castellano. "Cannot?" The Don's voice was soft, dangerous. "Or will not?" "I did not save you for money," Elena said. She forced herself to meet his eyes. "I saved you because it was right. Because no one deserves to die like that. Not even—" She caught herself, almost said, "Not even the man who killed my family." "Not even a stranger," she finished. Don Marco stared at her for a long moment. Then, to everyone's shock, he laughed. A real laugh, not the polite chuckle from the restaurant. A genuine expression of amusement. "Dante," the Don said, still smiling. "Where did you find this girl? She has more balls than half my soldiers." He tucked the money back into his wallet. "Very well, no money, but the debt remains, and the Castellano family always pays its debts." He moved to one of the leather chairs near the fireplace and lowered himself into it with a grunt. He gestured for Elena to sit across from him. "Sit, child, let me look at you properly." Elena glanced at Dante. He gave her an almost imperceptible nod. She sat. Don Marco studied her face in the firelight. His expression was unreadable. For a long moment, no one spoke. The only sound was the crackling of the fire and the distant ticking of the clock. "You remind me of someone," Don Marco said finally. "Someone I knew a long time ago." Elena's blood ran cold. Did he recognize her? Had he known her as a child? "You have that look," the Don continued, "that pride, that stubborn refusal to bow. I knew a man once who had that same look. A good man, an honorable man." He paused, took a deep breath. His name was Antonio Rossi. The world stopped. Elena could not breathe, could not think, could not move. Beside her, Dante had gone completely still. Don Marco leaned forward slightly. "Do you know that name, Elena?" "She should lie. She should deny it. She should—" "Yes," Elena whispered. "I know that name." "I thought you might." Don Marco's eyes were sharp now, assessing. "You speak the high dialect. You know the old ways. You have the look of the mountain families. And you saved my life even though you had every reason to let me die." He reached up and loosened his tie, unbuttoned the top button of his shirt. Then he pulled the collar aside to reveal his neck. There, just above his collarbone, was a scar. Old, faded, but unmistakable. The mark of a knife that had come within inches of his jugular. 1995, Don Marco said. "I was 43 years old, still young, still stupid. I went to a meeting in Palermo with the Bianchi family. They said they wanted peace. They said they wanted to negotiate territory." He let the collar fall back into place. "It was an ambush. 6 men with knives. They hit us in a parking garage. Killed 3 of my guards before we even knew what was happening. I took a blade to the throat. Would have died right there if not for him." "Antonio Rossi," Elena breathed. "He was there by chance," Don Marco continued. "Had a meeting in the same building. Heard the gunfire. He could have walked away. Should have walked away. Our families were not allies. We were not even friendly. But he came running anyway." The old man's eyes grew distant, lost in memory. He killed 2 of the Bianchi soldiers with his bare hands, grabbed the third by the throat and threw him over a railing. 3 stories down. Then he put pressure on my neck wound. Kept me alive until the ambulance came. Saved my life. Don Marco looked directly at Elena. I asked him why. Why save an enemy? And do you know what he said? Elena shook her head. She could not speak. He said, because honor demands it. Because we are men, not animals. Because some debts transcend blood feuds. The Don smiled sadly. I owed Antonio Rossi a life debt, the most sacred oath in our world. I swore to him that day that if he ever needed me, I would come, no matter what. No questions asked. He paused. And then, 3 years later, I ordered his family compound burned to the ground. The confession hung in the air like smoke. Dante stepped forward. Papa, why are you telling her this? Because she deserves to know. Don Marco's voice was heavy with something that might have been regret. Because she saved my life tonight, even though she knows what I did. Even though she has every right to hate me. He turned his gaze back to Elena. You are Elena Rossi, he said simply, daughter of Antonio, the girl who died in the fire. Except you didn't die, did you? Elena's hands were shaking. She clasped them together in her lap. No, I didn't die. I know. Don Marco leaned back in his chair. I've known since you spoke Sicilian at the restaurant. There was only one family in Prizzi that spoke the high dialect like that. The Rossis. And when you saved me tonight, the way you moved, that was tactical training. Military training. The kind of training Antonio gave to his daughter. He sighed, I'm getting old, Elena. My mind is not what it was. But I remember that night, the night of ash. I remember standing outside the compound and thinking, this is wrong. Antonio saved my life. I owe him everything. Then why did you do it? Elena's voice broke. Why did you kill them all? Because I am a coward, Don Marco said simply. Because the other families were watching. Because if I showed mercy to the Rossis, they would have seen weakness. They would have moved against me. Against Dante. Against everyone I was sworn to protect. He looked at his hands. I chose my family over honor. I chose survival over the debt I owed. And I have lived with that choice every day since. Tears were streaming down Elena's face now. She could not stop them. My mother, she whispered. Maria Rossi. She was pregnant. Did you know that? Don Marco's face crumpled. For the first time, he looked his age. Old. Tired. Broken. No, he said hoarsely. I did not know. Dante, you didn't tell me. I didn't know either, Dante said. His voice was hollow. Elena, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back, Elena said. The words came out harsh, bitter. Sorry doesn't give me back my family, my mother, my unborn sibling, my father, my childhood, my life. She stood up. The chair scraped against the floor. You took everything from me. And now you sit here and tell me you're sorry? That you had no choice? That you were following orders? Her voice was rising, breaking. 10 years of pain and rage and grief pouring out. I was 13 years old. I hid in a wine barrel and listened to my mother scream. I crawled out of the ashes and found her body. I held her hand while she died because you were too much of a coward to honor your debt. Victor moved toward her. Dante blocked his path. Don't, Dante warned. His hand was on his gun. She's disrespecting the Don, Victor growled. She needs to speak, Don Marco said. His voice was quiet, but it cut through the room like a knife. Let her speak, Victor. I owe her that much. He looked at Elena. His eyes were wet. You are right, he said. I am a coward. I am a monster. I am everything you say, and I cannot give you back what I took. I cannot undo the past. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on his cane. But I can give you justice. I can give you the truth, and I can give you a choice. He walked to his desk, pulled out a key from his pocket, unlocked a drawer, and withdrew a thick manila folder. After the night of ash, I did some digging, Don Marco said. Something about that night bothered me. The timing was too convenient. The intelligence was too good. Someone had given the order to move on the Rossis. Someone had pushed me into it. He opened the folder. Inside were photographs, documents, bank records. It took me 2 years to find the truth. The order came from the De Laurentiis family. They wanted the Rossi territory. They wanted to weaken me by making me break my oath. They manufactured evidence that your father was planning to betray the commission. They forged documents. They bribed witnesses. He spread the papers on the desk. The De Laurentiis family orchestrated everything. They killed your family, Elena. I was just the weapon they used. Elena stared at the documents. Her mind was reeling. The De Laurentiis family. She had heard the name. One of the 5 families based in New Jersey. Powerful, ruthless. Why didn't you move against them, she asked. If you knew the truth, why didn't you? Because I had no proof, Don Marco said. Nothing that would hold up in front of the commission. Nothing that would justify starting a war. And by the time I found this, he gestured to the folder. It was too late. The De Laurentiis had consolidated power. They had alliances. They had protection. He closed the folder. But now things have changed. Tonight, someone tried to kill me. The shooter on the roof, we found him. He was a De Laurentiis soldier. Dante stepped forward. Papa, we don't know that for certain. The man is dead. We can't. I know it was them, Don Marco said. Just like I know the man on the stairs was one of their plants. They wanted me dead. They wanted to finish what they started 10 years ago. He turned back to Elena. So here is your choice, Elena Rossi. You can take your revenge. I will not stop you. I will not fight back. I will kneel before you and you can put a bullet in my head. And maybe that will give you peace, he paused. Or you can help me destroy the family that actually killed yours. You can have real justice, real revenge. Not against an old man who was too weak to do the right thing, but against the people who orchestrated everything. Elena looked at Don Marco, at Dante, at Victor and the bodyguards. She thought about her father, about what he would want. She thought about the last thing he had said to her. The night before the fire, he had been teaching her chess, moving the pieces across the board. Remember, little one, he had said, revenge is a poison. It destroys the one who drinks it. But justice is a sword. And in the right hands, it can make things right. Lena took a deep breath. Tell me more about the De Laurentiis family. Don Marco smiled. It was a terrible smile. The smile of a wolf that had just been given permission to hunt. I'll do better than that. He walked to the far wall and pressed a hidden button. A section of the bookshelf swung open, revealing a steel door. I'll show you. The vault was small, maybe 10 feet by 10 feet. The walls were lined with safety deposit boxes. In the center was a table with a single locked metal case. Everything I've gathered on the De Laurentiis family is in there, Don Marco said, pointing to the case. Financial records, shipping manifests, names of corrupt politicians and judges, enough evidence to bring down their entire operation. He walked to the case, ran his fingers over the lock. But I kept it locked, sealed away, because opening this case means declaring war, and I'm too old for war. He looked at Elena. But you're not. Dante stepped forward. Papa, you can't be serious. Elena is a Rossi, Don Marco said, the last of her line. And by the old laws, she has the right to call for justice against those who destroyed her family. He pulled out a key, held it toward Elena. This key opens the case. But before I give it to you, you need to understand what it means. If you turn this key, you are declaring yourself. You are stepping out of the shadows. You are claiming your birthright as a daughter of the Rossis. And you will become a target, Dante added. His voice was tight with concern. Every enemy your father ever made will come for you. The De Laurentiis will hunt you. The other families will see you as a threat. I know, Elena said. She reached out and took the key from Don Marco's hand. It was warm from his palm, heavy with meaning. She walked to the case, inserted the key, turned it. The lock clicked open. Inside the case were files, dozens of them, bank statements showing money laundering operations, photographs of De Laurentiis soldiers meeting with corrupt officials, shipping manifests for drug and weapon smuggling, and at the very top, a photograph. Recent, dated just 3 weeks ago. It showed Vincent De Laurentiis, the family patriarch, standing outside a warehouse in New Jersey. And beside him, shaking his hand, was Victor Romano. Elena picked up the photograph, held it toward the light. Victor? She said softly. You are working with them? Victor's face twisted. His hand moved to his gun, but Dante was faster. He already had his Glock out and aimed at Victor's head. Don't, Dante said. His voice was ice. Don't even breathe wrong. Victor froze. His eyes darted between Dante, Don Marco, and Elena, calculating his odds. It's not what it looks like, Victor said, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? Don Marco's voice was dangerous, soft. Then explain to me why you're meeting with the man who tried to have me killed. I was gathering intelligence, Victor said quickly. I was trying to find out their plans. I was going to report back. You were the inside man, Elena interrupted. She pulled out another photograph from the case. This one showed Victor passing an envelope to a De Laurentiis soldier. You told them where Don Marco would be tonight. You gave them the restaurant layout. You coordinated the hit. Victor's face contorted with rage. You self-righteous little bitch. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know you betrayed your Don, Elena said calmly. I know you sold out your family for money, and I know the penalty for that. She looked at Don Marco. Under the old laws, a betrayer is given to the family he betrayed. His life belongs to them. They decide his fate. Don Marco nodded slowly. That is correct. Then I claim his life, Elena said. Victor Romano belongs to the Rossi family now, and I sentence him to death. Victor lunged. His hand finally closed on his gun. He pulled it free and aimed at Elena. 3 gunshots rang out simultaneously. Dante fired. So did Don Marco, pulling a snub-nosed revolver from his jacket. And Elena, moving on pure instinct, grabbed a letter opener from the desk and threw it in one fluid motion. All 3 found their marks. Victor stumbled backward. The gun fell from his hand. He looked down at the wounds in his chest, at the letter opener buried in his throat. He tried to speak. Blood bubbled from his mouth instead of words. Then he collapsed, dead before he hit the ground. The vault went silent. Smoke hung in the air. The smell of gunpowder was thick. Elena stared at Victor's body. She had just killed a man. She should feel something. Horror, guilt, remorse. But all she felt was cold satisfaction. Well, Don Marco said, lowering his revolver, I'd say that settles the question of whether you're truly Antonio's daughter. He looked at his bodyguards. Get Rocco. Have him clean this up. Victor's body goes in the river. He gets no funeral, no honors. He died a traitor, and he'll be remembered as one. The bodyguards moved to obey. Dante holstered his gun. He walked to Elena, gently took her hand. It was shaking now. The adrenaline was fading. The reality of what she had done was setting in. Come on, Dante said softly. Let's get you out of here. But Elena pulled her hand away. No, I'm not done yet. She turned back to the open case, started pulling out files, spreading them across the table. If we're going to war with the De Laurentiis family, we need a plan. We need to know their operations, their weaknesses, their allies. She looked up at Don Marco and Dante. My father was a strategist. He taught me to think 3 moves ahead, to never act on emotion, to strike only when victory is certain. She tapped one of the documents. The De Laurentiis family is moving a major shipment next week. According to this manifest, it's worth $50 million. Weapons, drugs, laundered cash, everything. Don Marco leaned over to look at the document. His eyes widened. If we intercept that shipment, Elena continued, we cripple their operation. We force them to explain the loss to their partners. We make them look weak. And then they retaliate, Dante pointed out. They come at us with everything they have. Good, Elena said. The word came out hard, final. Let them come. Let them expose themselves. And when they do, we'll be ready. She looked at Don Marco. You said you owed my father a life debt. You said you would help me get justice. So help me. Give me your soldiers. Give me your resources. Give me everything I need to destroy the family that killed mine. Don Marco studied her for a long moment. Then he did something that shocked everyone in the room. He took off his ring, the heavy gold signet ring with the Castellano crest, and he held it out to Elena. This ring belonged to my father, Don Marco said, and his father before him. It represents the full authority of the Castellano family. Whoever wears it speaks with my voice. Their word is law. Elena stared at the ring. I can't accept this. You already have, Don Marco said. He took her hand and placed the ring in her palm, closed her fingers around it. You are now under the protection of the Castellano family. You are one of us, and anyone who moves against you moves against me. He turned to Dante. She is your responsibility. You will guard her. You will advise her. And you will help her claim her vengeance. Dante nodded. There was something in his eyes as he looked at Elena. Pride, admiration, and something deeper. Something that made her heart race. There's one more thing, Don Marco said. He walked back to his desk, pulled out a piece of paper and a pen, started writing. The old families respect certain traditions, certain alliances. If you truly want to claim your father's legacy, Elena, you need to do it properly. He finished writing and signed the document with a flourish. This is a formal recognition from the Castellano family that Elena Rossi is the legitimate heir to the Rossi family name and territory. It grants you a seat at the commission. It gives you the right to call for a vote on the De Laurentiis betrayal. He held the document toward her. With this, you are no longer a ghost. You are Don Elena Rossi, the wolf who came back from the dead. Elena took the document with trembling hands, read the words, her name, her title, her birthright. She thought about her father, about her mother, about the family she had lost, and she thought about the family she had just gained. Strange, dangerous, built on blood and sin, but family nonetheless. I accept, Elena said. Her voice was steady now, strong. I claim my father's name, I claim his legacy, and I swear on his grave that I will see justice done. She looked at Dante, at Don Marco. But I won't do it alone. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about honor, about protecting the innocent, about making sure no one else loses their family the way I lost mine. She held up the Castellano ring. This war we're about to fight, we fight it together. The Rossis and the Castellanos, not as enemies, but as allies, as family. Don Marco's eyes were bright. He extended his hand. Then it settled. An alliance, sealed in blood and honor. Elena shook his hand, then Dante's. Now, Elena said, turning back to the files, let's plan a war. They worked through the night. By the time the sun began to rise over the Castellano estate, they had a plan. The De Laurentiis shipment would be intercepted, their operation would be exposed, and Elena Rossi would step out of the shadows and into the light, not as a victim, not as a ghost, but as a Don, a leader, a woman who had survived hell and come back stronger. As they finally left the vault, Dante caught Elena's arm, gently pulled her aside while Don Marco and the guards moved ahead. Are you sure about this? He asked. His ice blue eyes searched hers. Once you step into this world, there's no going back. You'll have enemies, constantly. You'll never be safe again. I've never been safe, Elena said. Not for 10 years. At least now I'm fighting back. Dante nodded slowly. Then I have something for you. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small wooden box. Opened it to reveal a silver pistol. Custom made, beautiful and deadly. It was your father's, Dante said quietly. I took it from the compound the night of the fire. I've kept it all these years. I don't know why. Maybe I always knew someday I'd need to return it. Elena took the gun. It felt right in her hand, like it belonged there. Thank you, she whispered. Dante cupped her face. His thumb brushed her cheek. I meant what I said earlier. I'll protect you, no matter what, even if it costs me everything. Wipe me? Elena asked. Why would you do that for me? Dante leaned in, his forehead rested against hers. His breath was warm on her lips. Because you're the first person in my entire life who's looked at me and seen someone worth saving, he said. Because when I'm with you, I remember what honor feels like, what redemption might look like. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. Because I'm falling in love with you, Elena Rossi, and I don't know how to stop. Elena's breath caught. She should push him away, should remind him that he killed her family, that nothing could ever make that right. But standing there in the early morning light, looking into his eyes, all she could think was that sometimes the line between love and hate was thinner than a knife blade, and sometimes crossing that line was the bravest thing you could do. She reached up, pulled him down, and kissed him. It was not a gentle kiss. It was fierce, desperate, full of pain and promise and the 1,000 unspoken words between them. When they finally pulled apart, both were breathing hard. This doesn't mean I forgive you, Elena said. Not yet, maybe not ever. I know, Dante said, but maybe someday you will. And I'll spend every day until then trying to earn it. Elena nodded. She tucked her father's gun into her waistband, adjusted the Castellano ring on her finger. Come on, she said. We have a war to win. They walked out of the office together, side by side, the ghost and the wolf, the Rossi and the Castellano. Two families that should have destroyed each other, but instead had found something neither expected. Hope, alliance, and maybe, just maybe, redemption. The war with the De Laurentiis family would be brutal. Elena knew that. People would die, blood would be spilled, the city would shake with violence. But she was ready, because she was no longer running, no longer hiding, no longer afraid. She was Elena Rossi, daughter of Antonio, heir to a murdered family. And she was coming for her enemies like a wolf out of the darkness. And God help anyone who stood in her way.